Okay. Dave, how are you?
I'm well. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for doing this. I do appreciate everybody that I ask to do this is extremely busy. And so, yeah, I do appreciate you taking the time to come on here.
My pleasure.
So the first thing I want to know is kind of how's the start of the year been? What's been going on?
It's been pretty good. Kind of slow. I'm up in the Northwest now. It's cold. Still getting
Yeah.
used to it. I was in California for 20 years, so
Yeah.
it's good. Hanging out with some family and doing some work here in my little drum studio.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Cool. What sort of musical projects have you got on the go of irons in the fire?
Um, I've got some stuff I'm just doing on my own. Kind
Hmm.
of put a song out here and there. I'm gonna put one out in a couple of weeks, I think, or maybe like a week, and then a band called Asian She from LA that I just had a song come out with. I really dig that one. And Big Game Hunter, some friends from Seattle and a friend in LA. We've been doing some stuff. I haven't played any shows, but just doing some recording, put some stuff out, and that's kind of that's pretty much it right now. I think it's kind of
Okay.
it's the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. So as I kind of mentioned that the whole focus of this podcast is, how do people improve? How do they practice? How do they get better? But what was your first kind of steps into music? How did you get into being a musician and a drummer?
Just loved music and started banging on everything around the house. And then found my brother had played, he's about 10 years older than me. He played in band, had a snare drum, and I came across it accidentally. And so that was right around the time that I was going to start band in school
Hmm.
when I was 10. So I started doing that. I had a snare drum and played in school band for a couple of years. Then I got a kit
Hmm.
when I was 13. And my friend taught me a couple of beats and sold me the kit. And then some friends of my brother's a year older than me, they had a band. And he's like, my brother's drummer. He's just got a drum set. So I started jamming with them. And that was my first band
Hmm.
called Outrigger when I
Okay.
was 13 and 14. And then, from there, I went into high school in eighth grade and I had been playing in band. So I was going to do jazz. And it was very, I've been playing rock songs. So it was very traditional jazz.
Mm.
And the teacher, he was a really good teacher, but he was a super stickler on
Mm.
like traditional jazz drum set kind of thing. And I kind of want to rock out more. But across the hall, there was a jazz choir
Mm.
that was playing like jazz standards, more big band kind of vibe. I asked if I'd do that. So I went and did that, which was great because it really taught me a lot about, playing with vocalists.
Yeah. How did the two different styles did that like inform your later playing?
Yeah, very much. I learned a lot about playing with singers, the importance of what my role is,
Mm.
supporting a vocal, really the main thing. And it was a piano, bass, guitar, just a small musical group that supported the choir. The choir was probably, I don't know, 12 people, and learned
Yeah.
a lot of jazz standards, which
Mm.
was actually really cool.
Okay.
We played like some pop stuff, but all the way back to like, I don't know, late 30s, early 40s,
Yeah.
up until like current pop stuff. But that was really educational.
Yeah. And was that kind of how you learnt drums, or did you have informal lessons or formal lessons, or did you just
That was pretty
put
much it.
records on and jam along to them?
Yeah, that was my main teaching. My
Mm.
teachers were like, I learned a lot. I was pretty good with my rudiments when I was young. I was kind of obsessed and I had a really good teacher. So I was pretty sharp on that. And then once I got in a band when I was, in my early teens, yeah, I would just put on a record or whatever
Yeah.
and kind of learn that way. I didn't
Okay.
really have a formal like drum set teacher,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. And no music college, anything, or university?
Well,
No.
unfortunately, I wish I did.
Well, do you know what? I think that those kind of music colleges and educations, I think they're a bit kind of a double-edged sword. You've got, these great institutions that are just built for just learning, and you can learn across various different styles. But then on the flip side of that, you're not, or certainly when I was there, you weren't encouraged to go out and play live. It was, you turn up to the course, you do your classes, you come to class, you can't skip a class because you've got a gig or a session, which I was a bit kind of like, well, that's kind of counterintuitive to what we're learning.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would have liked to have had, my reading music, and I would have loved to kept that going.
Yeah.
Because once I stopped doing that, it kind of, I wish I could have picked that up later in life. I was, in the studio more. Would have been great, really helpful. And I think jam with other musicians that are, serious about it, would have been great. But yeah, it was, there's definitely an upside to just being free to do whatever, which was great as well. It was like I got to jam with whoever was, down to jam, and a lot of different types of music, which is great, and clubs and decent clubs and not so decent,
the sticky underfoot clubs.
Yeah, a lot of different situations there. So
yeah, I don't know what it's like in the States with music venues, but we've got music venues are closing daily over here, and it's just really sad. Like all the venues that I was playing 20 years ago, the first venue I ever played is now a drive-through McDonald's. The other venues they're turning them into houses and flats, and it's just less and less or fewer places to play.
Yeah, that's just awful. Up here in the Northwest, it's still, there's some that are gone, but there's still some clubs, which is great. So I was kind of surprised because, I've been gone for a long time. I've been visiting and I've played some clubs here. It's good to know. And then I think a couple have just opened up near here recently. So
that's good.
It's pretty good. Yeah. But a lot of the bigger cities I noticed, like touring over the last, 10, 12 years is, that's been kind of the common theme. You hear that a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the club that used to play is no more. Or, like New York, everything's moving. Brooklyn is a lot, Manhattan now, stuff like that. But I know it's kind of weird. It seems like a venue, if you can put a DJ in there or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It cuts costs, but
that's it. Yeah.
Like rent over here is now insane. Like venues are just struggling, and
right, exactly.
People are struggling financially, so they can either, shell out 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds or dollars for an evening out, or it's, well, I can just go and get a pizza and a beer and watch Netflix all evening.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because it used to, I don't know what admission to a small show is, but over there 10, 20 years ago, £5 to £10 would get you in. They might do some promo on beer and stuff like that, and it was relatively inexpensive. But now it's like tribute shows are just massive over here, and it's £25, £30 a ticket, which is, you're getting onto kind of, you could go to the small Shepherd's Bush, the Astoria, places like that, not the Astoria, but the Underworld in Camden. You could see any original act that was there for less than a tribute act. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. Hopefully it'll kind of swing back the other way.
I hope it does. It'd
be nice.
Yeah. So practicing. Do you still practice? Do you call it practice? You mentioned rudiments. You've mentioned reading. These are all kind of things that I would associate with practice.
Yes, exactly. No, I used to practice real hard. I still practice. I call it practice because it's like if I'm not playing for something like learning a song or rehearsing with a band, I call it practice. I have this room here. I'll show you. I got my kit over here. I basically, like, if I'm not doing anything, I'll come in here every day and try to play for a while, at least half an hour or something like that. So I
Yeah.
call that practice. My favorite is James Brown. Like I'll put some James Brown
Okay.
on
Yeah.
and just try and lock into a groove. So
Yeah.
but sometimes I'll just flip through and find something I don't listen to that much
Mm-hmm.
and, play along. And it's
Stick it on, play
just,
along.
yeah. And it's super like, I just got into some Dylan recently
Mm.
and some amazing musicians, of course.
Yeah.
It's like from Time Out of Mind, I went back to like Blonde on Blonde. And then before that as well. But it's like playing to that, really listening to
Mm-hmm.
like, what's going on. It's like, it was an eye opener. I really kind of heard things I'd
Yeah.
never heard before. So that I felt that's some good practice trying to
Yeah.
keep up with
It
that.
was. It's weird you mentioned Blonde on Blonde. I was thinking about that album today. I can't remember what I was in the kitchen. I was like making the kids dinner. I was like, I haven't listened to that album in such a long time. Maybe I'll put that on. And then you just dropped it. It's like, yeah, okay. Maybe someone's telling me, pushing me towards the Dylan stuff again.
Yeah, it's a great record.
I mean, it's one of those records that I think everybody has to listen to just once.
Oh, yeah, it's a class.
You're practicing, like, has it changed over the years? Is it just the same kind of rudiments, the same kind of stuff, the same approach?
No, not really. I'm trying to play. So it's like if I get into, say, like a James Brown thing or whatever, and play to that for 30 minutes or something like that. Sometimes I'll try, like, I mean, that's an example, but a band that I'm listening to, sometimes I'll really try and emulate what they're doing, the feel, the kick pattern, that sort of thing. And it really kind of pushes me. It's like, it stretches my kind of like comfort zone, I guess you could say. And I find that really helpful because it's like getting out of the comfort zone, doing something like, here's a song, here's that, here's the groove. It's like, you could do it any number of ways kind of thing. To really try and focus and do something that's physically how I would not be comfortable, you know what I mean? Like really kind of stretch myself that way. I find super helpful.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll just get into it though and just play how, play differently, like kind of play along with that drummer.
Yeah.
Put a different groove to it.
Okay.
Experiment that way. And a lot of times I'll come in fact, I don't know if it's, I would say most times, but often I'll come in and I have a TV in here and I'll just flip that on and just play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Whatever. And put different cymbals up or snares. So I'll just try to kind of, and that's kind of getting into rudiments and things like that. And things I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
So my kids in shape.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like the idea of just putting the TV on and putting stuff, trying to play along to stuff that's on the TV. I'd say this to my students. I was like, look, you don't have to sit down and do like 20 minutes or 30 minutes focused practice. Just flick the TV on, have your guitar, and see if you can just pick out little tunes, little melodies that are going on. Because it's, you have the instrument in your hand, which is good, and you're working on your ear. So you're trying to emulate what you hear. And, certainly things like ear training is not something that I see a lot of people pushing, particularly guitar players. So much is just...
Oh, that's a good idea.
So much of it is just, people will just request sheet music tabs from YouTubers, Instagrammers, and, there's very little focus on just put the record on, listen to it, and try and figure it out.
Right. Yeah. No, that's cool. It's a different perspective too. It kind of gets out of that comfort zone too. Cause I'm sure, I know that the YouTube stuff, I mean, the tab stuff, the YouTube stuff, it's kind of crazy. Like I had a friend coming over before I moved up here and I have a guitar. So I like mess around with the guitar and the bass and stuff. And he'd bring his bass over and we'd sit there and I'd get my guitar going and he'd pull up a tune that he'd been practicing on the bass. So I try and play along on the guitar, but it's kind of amazing how like there's it's any tune you can think of. There's somebody out there that's like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So these are the chords, and it's kind of cool.
I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm not going to lie. If I get called up for a last minute gig, like you got to play it tomorrow night, I'm like, okay, I can either spend hours trying to figure it out by ear, or I can just go online on YouTube. Someone's got a lesson for it. Someone have a chord chart for it, something to get me through the gig, and I'll use it, exclusively. But like you said, it's other people have mentioned, it's like no one's working on your ear. It's just.
Yeah.
Then that's a different skill. Like, here's a chord chart, here's the song, play it. That's a different skill, and I think that's just as valuable.
Yeah, one of the things that really helped me coming up, and I guess you could put this in the practice category, was playing with friends. For one thing, just jamming on tunes. You know what I mean? But we would often, pretty much all the time, we'd get into something, and I had friends, like, we didn't have a band per se, we didn't have a singer or whatever, but we'd get together after school and just jam. Mm-hmm. And that taught me a lot about interacting with other musicians and really listening, because it's like, if you have no set song or structure and we just start playing, that's all you're doing is listening to the other musicians,
Yeah.
It's just like, I got cassettes. I was actually talking to a friend of mine. I'm back in my hometown where I grew up, and a friend of mine stopped by the other day, and he builds guitars and stuff, and he texted me like a cassette, and I'm like, I got a drawer full. I need to get a cassette player, because there's like jams that go on for, an entire side of a cassette.
Yeah.
That's just improv.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's like, that was something that really served me when I started playing in bands, as far as like improving, or, because something always goes wrong. It is.
Yeah.
Playing somewhere, something cuts out, or, it's like just being able to like think on your feet and, come up with something. But that makes that interaction, you're not so freaked out. You're not so,
it's less of a surprise.
Roll with it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the fun things about playing, is not less necessarily being, constrained to certain forms. It's just, why don't we play for fun for 20 minutes?
Totally. Yeah.
So, were there any like light bulb moments that you had when you were learning, like shit, like this goes with that, and the two together makes this? And
that was, it's interesting when you're learning, or if you have a lesson. I remember when I was a kid doing snare drum, I had a teacher working on rudiments and whatnot. And then I was still doing that when I had a drum set and was playing with other people. And then I would go back to the snare and dynamics, you know what I mean? That's something that really, there was a light bulb for me. It's just like, and I learned a lot when I was playing with that jazz choir as well. Bringing it up and down, and not just being, I guess there's some stuff that calls for being maxed out there.
Yeah.
I've never been in that mode or played that stuff necessarily. So that's something that, I would say really kind of like opened my eyes. Just, it's one thing to be taught that or hear that or whatever, but to really like have it, like unfold as you're going along, and then see the results and kind of, oh, that's really cool. You know what I mean? It's like, so it kind of went along with the improv thing. So it's like a happy snowball. It all kind of played, one thing off the other. But that's something that it was a big moment for me, I would say, is learning dynamics. You know what I mean? Like when to crank it up and bring it down. And
So I was teaching at what you call an elementary school, and they allowed me to put this rock band together.
Nice.
And I couldn't communicate with the drummer. Like I didn't. I mean, I know the parts of the drums, but I was like, that's not the groove. I don't know how to explain it to you, how to play it differently. And so I had some drum lessons. So I went to a guy, and it was like second or third lesson, and he said, right, what we're doing is you're doing 8s on the hat, backbeats on 2 and 4, and your kicks on 1 and 3. It's like, cool, okay. And I kind of got it. He went, now move the kick from 1 and 3, I think it was, to 1 and 2, or 1 and 4. He's like, and now you're playing Motown. I was like, am I? He's like, yeah, just move the kick. Now move the kick from here to here. Now you're playing disco. I was like, and that's it? And he said, yeah, you just move the kick. put the kick on every 4. That's what that is. What would that be? And
Just
it's like,
yeah.
And he said essentially that's what drum is. Wherever you put the kick is where the groove moves. And if you manipulate that, you can move from swing and jazz to rock and roll to blues to country to disco. And it's just the kick that moves. And I was like, fuck. Like, shit, I had no idea. And then when I listened to grooves, I'm like, what's the kick doing? Kick's on the 3 and 4. It's on the 1, 3 and 4. I was like, okay, that's a cool little groove. But the snare and the hats are just doing their thing on the backbeat. And that was just one of those rare light bulb moments that I get these days. But it's cool. Yeah. Now we're talking about getting better. Do you have any like markers for I'm getting better? Like things that you couldn't do that you finally nailed? Anything like that goes on?
Yeah, it's, sometimes you kind of hit on something and wow, I couldn't get that before. I think really repetition.
Yeah.
With music, I know for drums, for me, that repetition and just that really brings about the change. You know what I mean? And you might not see it overnight, but sometimes other people in the band or people you're playing with will notice it before you. But just staying on it. You know what I mean? And, being consistent with and open-minded too. It's like you can always get better. You can always improve on something, or even like tweak it, play a little different, just to see if maybe that helps the groove or whatever. But yeah, I think that that repetition and keeping the mind open, and then the next thing you know, it's like things are getting easier. But it's it's just one of those things that, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
That feel the same way. It's just like that kind of practice, that repetition, where something is like not second nature the first time. It's like if you keep at it. I mean, I've had things where it's just like I can't do that. You know what I mean? I have to like augment that in a way, which is also a kind of an
interesting skill.
Yeah, but yeah, getting to where. And I'll do that still to this day. It's like if something is kind of like, man, I would, that's not comfortable to do, but I'll keep trying it. Come back to that song and put it on and give it a go. And it's like, oh, you know what? I get it. Or, that's the other thing is like, I think listening is really everything.
Yeah.
There's stuff that I've been listening to my whole life, it seems like, that sometimes I'll hear it on a different stereo or in a car or online or whatever, and something will pop out because it's like tiny speakers or it's mono.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll be like, wow, I really never noticed that before.
Yeah. Yeah, I got asked to do a gig. Do you know a country artist called Lainey Wilson?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's a girl over here that's kind of putting a tribute show to her, and she sent me these songs over to learn. And I spent a week just learning through it. I got through to the end of it. I was like just hammering these tunes into my head. And then we were driving down to rehearsal, and I was like, I'll just put it on. I'll just listen to it, see if there's any harmonies that I can pick up. And I'll sit to it, and like the whole second verse is completely different to the first verse. But what I was playing over the second verse, like if I transpose from the first to the second verse, was fine, but the guitar parts were just completely different, and I just wasn't listening to it. I was like, oh fuck! So I've now got to try and learn all this stuff on the car drive down to the studio, and it's it's weird. I don't know if it was just because it was the car radio versus the studio speakers that I've got, that just the frequencies are just tuned out some of these second guitar parts. I was like, no, I've got to learn those. But yeah, now listening it's the superpower, I think. Listening.
It really is.
But unfortunately, like, it doesn't sell tickets to YouTube videos. It doesn't get clicks on Instagram because it's nobody really wants to listen to that.
It's you know what? It is interesting. Like it's just a different mode today. Like, learning anything, it seems like there's a lot of technical advice, but it's that subtle little, like, between stuff that you can only pick up playing with other people, trying, having a bunch of different musical experiences. It's like,
Yeah.
you look back on it, it's like, wow, that is like some serious progression from like when you started and you're jamming with your friends and you have
Yeah.
different like, gigs pop up that are different styles, different venues, different
Yeah.
audiences.
Yeah.
It's all part of the soup that makes it so good.
I know. I mean, I think the information that is available is just so deep and so wide that people are able to now progress technically through their instrument
Yeah.
stupidly quick.
Right.
And I've seen guitar players that are technically like fucking light years ahead of where they should be in terms of years played. But then I've had conversations with them, and I've said something. Oh yeah, that's just a Motown groove. They're like, what's a Motown groove? I was like, yeah, you're just sitting on the but cut, but cut. And they're like, can't do that. What's that? I say, so the one is the click, the two is the chord, the three is the click, and the four is the chord. So you're going but cha, that kind of thing. And they're like, no, I can't. What's that? I was like, well, you've listened to Motown and R&B. No, I was like, well, you should. Why haven't you listened to that? And it's like there isn't a leveling up of certain things. That certain things have just been left on the floor, and they've just leveled the technique up and up and up and up and up. But they can't do
Yes.
the real basic stuff. Like that's just a C chord. That's just a Steve Cropper C chord. Could you do that? No. What about Freddie Green kind of comping? No, can't do that. And it's just odd. I just find it odd.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like learning history. Like I feel like, and this, you probably had this experience too. It's like when you're coming up, there are people that are older.
Yeah.
You're picking things up and they'll school you. You know what I mean? That just, which is great. And it's like, listen to this, check this out,
You like that album? Listen to this. This was what birthed this album.
Right.
Like,
exactly. A lot of that stuff seems like that's missing. So hopefully the kids will go back and get interested in, kind of backtracking and getting to the roots of where that stuff comes from. Because
I'm trying. I am trying. I get kids come to classes and lessons, and I'm like, why do you want to learn guitar? It's astounding that how frequently the answer is, I don't know. What music do you listen to? It's like, I don't listen to music. It's like, okay, so I'm now going to have to teach you how to play the instrument. I'm also now going to have to sort of educate you musically. And so I'll write down, like, check these 3 or 4 albums out. How'd you get to school? Oh, I take the bus. You got earpods? He said, yeah. So put them in. Here's 3 albums. You've got a 20-minute bus journey to school, 20-minute bus journey home. You can get an album a day. Here's 3 albums. Come back. We'll talk about them next week. And
good.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, music is so readily available, but nobody's listening to it. And I say this every fucking episode. Like, music is essentially free and no one's listening to it. And it's really sad.
I just saw that Zeppelin becoming Led Zeppelin.
I haven't seen it yet.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. But it reminded me, when I was young, it's like when they were young, it's really cool because it goes back to when they started playing, as kids and their kind of individual experiences, that desire, that drive, they're just like so hungry for it.
Yeah.
And it's just like anything to get that instrument, and they were checking stuff and, like their influence. It's really cool. It's like that, it's probably, especially at that point, like hard to come by influences, getting to hear music, getting to go see somebody play music, like very, and it's like, I don't know if it's taken for granted, but yeah, like you said, there's so much free stuff. It's so readily available.
It must be overwhelming as well.
Right.
It must be,
that's a good point. Yeah. Where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure it was the same with you. If you earned money from, doing chores around the house, whatever it was that you did as a 14, 15-year-old, you go to the record store at the weekend. It's like, well, I've got $10. I've got £10. What am I going to get?
Yeah.
Exactly. I've got to make it last. And if you come away with something that sucks, it's like, well, that's wasted. I've now wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. So my older brother, he had a great, collection of music. Like he was listening to classic rock
Yeah.
Zeppelin, Aerosmith, the Guess Who. I mean, everybody back then. It was like those albums were coming out, so I was
Yeah.
like, 6, 7, 8 years old, listening to 8 track in the car, and so that was great. But yeah, it's like that was the thing. You worked hard to get,
Mm.
to go get a new record, and it was a
Yeah.
big deal. Like going to the
Yeah, it
record
was.
store with
Yeah.
your friends, and yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah. It's kind of, I miss it. I mean, I think vinyl's making a bit of a resurgence, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But yeah, I mean, what you mentioned about that dedication and that hunger for the crafts, it just reminded me of the story. I think was it Paul McCartney and George Harrison taking a bus across Liverpool because there was a guy who knew how to play a B7 chord and they didn't know how to play it.
wow.
And it was just like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Like taking a bus across town, show us how to play a beat. Right, coming back and like, right, let's shoehorn this into all of our songs. It's
Dedication.
yeah. The other thing, and I mean, I know I can't let you go without talking about Pearl Jam. And as a huge Pearl Jam fan, when you first started doing those early sessions, did it feel like you were doing something special?
Yeah, I did to me.
Mm.
I mean, I was pretty lucky. I had a lot of friends and some friends who were a few years older. I had some really great like tutelage,
Mm.
with like guys I grew up with or in the area that were a little older that were great musicians.
Mm.
And so by the time I got to play with those guys, I was a big Mother Love Bone fan, but I also was lucky that I had played with some really talented people.
Mm-hmm.
So I could recognize their talent.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
be like, this is cool. Like it was such a sound from the get-go. Like when we first got together, Eddie hadn't come up yet. So it was me, on Mike and Jeff
Mm-hmm.
playing pretty much the demo tape that Stone had.
Yeah.
So we started working on that, and immediately I was just like, and this is exactly
Mm-hmm.
like if I could pick a band and the sound or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I would be into. So you know, it felt to me like it fell together really easily and
Yeah.
sounded really good. So
Yeah.
from the get go, yeah, I was like, I'm back in my hometown now. It's about an hour south of Seattle. So I was living in Seattle, jamming with them, and I'd come home and hang out with some friends, and it's like, what's going on, blah 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 blah.
Mm.
I'm jamming with these guys, and if some of my friends love Mother Love Bone too, and there was a real scene happening, obviously in Seattle.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
of my friends I grew up with were playing with Mother Love Bone and Alice in Chains and doing
Yeah.
gigs with them, Soundgarden. So I was just like, I was like, what's your take on it? I was like, it's amazing. Like I'm
Mm.
blown away. Like I think it's great. And then
Yeah.
it just it progressed from there. And I really thought, and when we were tracking the album, I just thought this is something really special. And they're so low key about it,
Mm. Yeah.
they were just I think they were excited, but they'd been there and done a lot already.
Mm.
So, and they also probably didn't want to like get too excited just because you never know. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas
Yeah,
for
yeah.
somebody like me, that was the first time I was like, I'd been in London Bridge actually,
Yeah.
right when it opened with another band that I was in. But on a level like that, what was going on, you know what I mean? Like that was the first time for me being in a situation that was so serious.
Yeah.
So, but I was also like free to just kind of like, express this is killer. Like I was
Yeah.
like, this is badass, So, yeah, I thought it was great from the get go. And I have a couple friends who were like, man, I remember you saying like, this is like out there, like really good, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
floored. And then once Eddie got there and started singing, it was just like, oh, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is really special, I thought.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any particular album, like any albums that you're most proud of?
Well, that one, of course, and Unified Theory record. I did with a couple
I got the
of
first.
guys.
I didn't realize that there was two Unified Theory records.
Yeah, the other one, it's kind of a long story, but we had done the one and then got a deal and put it out. And then we were going to look for another deal. They wanted out of that deal. It was a little chaotic at the end. But then the second one is more kind of piecemeal together. So it wasn't so much as focused, I don't think. I mean, there's some good stuff on there for sure, but that one, and then the stuff I've done with Candlebox, I'm really proud of.
Okay.
From Happy Pills, that was 98.
Yeah.
Even until Wolves is the last thing I did with them in 2019.
Okay.
I think of every record, I think they did one last year that I'm not on, but yeah, from 2019 back to 1998, all that stuff. I'm proud of that stuff. I think it rocks.
Okay. And how do you approach sort of like live playing to studio playing?
That's a good question. Well, I really try to keep things pretty simple in the studio and, support the vocal, play with the bass player, and never just kind of whatever fits in the song. If somebody's like, hey, can you go off more here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Play a fill here. But I don't like doing a lot of fills. I mean, if it calls for it or there's a section that builds up or gets a little loose, then that's cool. But yeah, I really, if somebody's producing it and, they're in charge, they're hearing something, I try and like make them happy. But always the bottom line, make the rest of the band sound as good as possible. Make us as good as possible.
Okay. If you had
live, it's like, then I like to go off more and get a little looser.
Okay. All right. Do you ever get reined back in? Like people sort of saying, just pull that back a bit?
No, not really.
No? Okay. You're free to kind of do your own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had more people say like, hey, go off more or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I have the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you'd stuck with Pearl Jam, how do you think your playing would have affected or influenced their sound going through those, I don't know, let's say the first 5 albums?
That's a good question. I don't know. It'd probably be, similar to 10. I was very fortunate to play with those guys. They did a great job kind of expressing what they want, with the song. So if they have an idea in mind, they know how to express it, but there's a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
To fit that in. So it was never one thing I really like. And some people get caught up in talking about kick drum patterns. Sometimes people be like, no, can you hit here, and on the 3 and then and they get super particular, which is fine, but they were never that way. It was very like more broad strokes. So it was kind of like, this is the feel. There's always a feel that was super easy to kind of hop onto.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. I wish I could have heard it because I think they're always looking to do something differently, and I would have been too. Who knows? It would have been like, I know we wouldn't have tried to make the same record twice. I know that. But I don't know. It would have been fun to like get into maybe even more percussion. Because I did the timpani on Oceans.
Yeah.
Went back and listened, and that was up. It's like, hey, let's keep it like that.
Yeah.
Because I did a drum track on it, and it was cool like that. But, maybe that would be kind of cool to experiment more. Maybe do some electronic stuff, more percussion.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if you could have played on any other Pearl Jam album, which one were you picking?
Question. The latest one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. How come?
I think that producers doing some cool things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just evolving as a musician, you know what I mean? Getting to like apply that with the band now, because getting to sit in with them a couple of years ago was kind of like picked up where we left, it was kind of real easy, and it didn't, nothing, it wasn't like any time had passed, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to like work with that producer with them now, and myself now having gone through everything everyone's gone through.
Yeah.
and great songs. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, and the Unified Theory album, because I'm a massive Blind Melon fan as well. So when I saw those albums, that collaboration of musicians, I was like, oh, it's going to be good. And it's one of my favorite albums. And I realized today, I was like, where is that album? I was like, it's in a box somewhere, like in my parents' house, and I cannot find it online anywhere other than buying a CD, and I don't have a CD player.
Yeah, I just got a CD player.
So I'm gonna have to go out and buy a CD player. So yeah, what was that album like? Because I mean, certainly think that the pairing of Chris Thorne and Roger Stevens is one of the best double guitar playing duos that I've ever heard. The way they layer guitars is just mind blowing. So what was it like working with Chris and with Brad and Chris, or both Chris's?
It was great. I mean, I had just gotten Candlebox. We went to LA and recorded. We were there for about 6 months, something like that. And I came back and lived in Seattle. And I'd met Christopher Thorne before Kevin introduced us to a party at his house. He lived like just blocks from me in Seattle.
Okay.
And then Brad lived across town, not very far, like 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And so, and I got back after being in LA, I got a call from Brad, and he's like, hey, it's Brad Smith, your new best friend. And I was like, hey, and I don't think I'd met Brad yet. And so we had a great talk, and he's like, can you come over and lay some drums down? And I was like, sure, I love to. And he had a studio at his place, and Christopher had a studio at his place. So I went over to Brad's. We did Cessna and something else. Jeez, I can't remember.
Okay.
We did that song, something, and it was like, wow, this is cool. Because Candlebox was great, and it was rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pretty intense. And this was like a whole other trip going on. He had this loop going.
Yeah.
That I played to, and Brad was playing Taurus pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of loops, like he was playing them. The loops, it was loop, but he was playing them with the Taurus pedal. So he was starting and stopping. The plan was for me to do that, but I never figured out how to run. So he just did that, which made it easy.
Okay.
Well, that was a whole different trip. Like that, that album is so layered and it's not in your face rock.
Yeah.
All. And so that was a great experience, real easy to play with. Those guys are so knowledgeable and so and they go back, talk about like knowing the history and being into like what got, that all the influences, having a really good understanding of that. So it was very, it was a great, and I was like, man, I wish I could do 2 places at one time, So it's like, we did a couple songs, 2 or 3, and then I had to go on tour with Candlebox, and Brad called me, and I was like, I gotta go. And he's like, what? And I said, you knew I was in Candlebox now.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, well, I thought you were in the band. What the hell? So when I was out on the road with Candlebox, and that was a turbulent time in that band.
Mm-hmm.
So after, I don't know, like a year or whatever it was, I was ready to depart that band, and they were kind of breaking up as it went along. So I got back to Seattle.
Yeah.
Let a few other guys play on some tracks. And when I came back, then we finished the album.
Okay.
And that was great. But yeah, and then they were like a production duo once they were down in LA. So when I moved to LA in 2003, I worked with them on some different projects, people's records, and they're just like sickeningly talented, what I mean? It's like, it's for sure. And I think they work with some great producers and stuff in Blind Melon. So they took a lot from that.
Yeah, those first two Blind Melon albums are just there's something else. They're just incredible. Just like all the layers, the harmonies. I think Shannon's vocals are just, there's some magic in there. And that would have just been lovely to see 5 or 6 albums from them.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those bands you can imagine what they'd be doing now. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
cool.
They are still putting records out, and I've tried to give it a listen. It doesn't gel with me. It doesn't vibe with me with the new singer. I can't remember his name. Travis Warren.
Yeah, right.
I have tried to give it a listen, but yeah, those first 2 albums are there's something magical there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing, before I let you go, is there any what was the best piece of advice you'd gotten
Wow.
as a musician, like
That's a great.
nuggets that
Yeah.
people had laid
Well,
on you?
laying back on the beat. When I worked with a producer before I was in Pearl Jam. I was in a band called Agent Boy. We went into London Bridge and we worked with this guy, Rick Fisher, who worked with Steve Miller for years. And I was super into Stuart Copeland.
Yeah.
I still am, but
Yeah.
I was just like, I had the rotor toms. I was just like very like, and he was like, whoa, dude, no, get the rotor tom out of here. I'm like, what?
This is my gear.
He's like, no. So I had like one up, one down. That's what really started me on that, like a 4-piece kit. He's like, open the hats, lay back, listen to this, hear that? Yeah. Like, dude, like you got to lay way back on the beat. So that was something that was extremely helpful. And that was right before I started jamming with those guys.
Yeah. That
So
played
it
into
could
it, I
have been
bet.
better timing.
Yeah.
That was a huge nugget for me because I was like, wow, okay, yeah. Because even placing the beat, like I'd never thought of that. Nobody ever talked to me about on the front of the beat, the back of the beat. And so that was really a great nugget. And then supporting the vocal, like my teacher, Connie Fenton, when I was playing with the jazz, thing, just, if someone's singing, that's your main job is to support that vocal.
Yeah.
Best you can. And so that's always stuck with me as a really good piece of advice. And, listening to the other musicians is just, that's everything.
Yeah.
I think to me is the most important.
Yeah.
Playing off each other, but listening to everyone else because, sometimes I'm watching a band and it's just like, drummer's great, but he's like locked in and doing his thing. And the band's playing to him.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to hear a little more interplay, or is like pick up that feeling that's going on more.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the great thing about that Zeppelin film, just the way they just like, I mean, you've known it, you know what I mean? But it's like that, go check it out. Because
it's on my list of things to.
It's like they talk to the guys and it's like, you really get that feel of like how locked in they were and played off each other and respected each other. And it's like, it's pretty cool like that. Yeah. So I would say that's been a great nugget for me over the years. Like, and then listen to, respect your elders. Like there's always people that have been playing a long time. It's like they tend to, if they'd have given it up, or you know what I mean? Like you don't last that long unless you can play pretty good. So I've always found that people that came before me and then had more experience, that's priceless. That's the stuff that you can't find on YouTube. Like interacting with musicians that have a lot of experience. And then, just any time you can go see live music, I think is a great thing because as you know, it's like when you see a band, isn't it like it's such a different thing? Like to watch a band play and to like hear it live, and experience that interaction. I think is a great thing. And what else? Playing live as much as possible.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you probably agree with me. Like you can rehearse as a band, right?
Yeah.
But when you go out and play, don't you feel like it's like that's like 30 rehearsals in one because it's it's like that's when it all
comes together, or maybe it doesn't come together, and you've got to go back in and you do some more work.
Exactly.
But it puts everything under a microscope. Now you got people watching you. They pay to come and see you. It's like, okay, you can't stare at the floor. You got to stare out. Like you've not rehearsed that yet.
Right. Yeah.
So,
that too. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
When you do your rehearsals, how are you facing out to like a crowd, or are you turned in playing to each other? And if you've only playing into each other, as soon as you turn around, you're like, oh fuck, there's an audience. They were on a stage.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've not done this
right.
before.
Good point. Yes. That's practice that too. To be aware of. Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing I'm going to ask you, as someone who's just got a drum kit, what's what's your tips for playing drums?
Wow. Well, I tell you that,
I did get
like I said, playing to James Brown, I mean,
yeah.
those guys are insane, right? So it's like, I'm not going to be able to do what Jabo does, but at the same time, it's like one of the things I really love about playing to it, that static,
Yeah.
they'll get locked into a groove and play that thing for,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And I love that because sometimes that's kind of difficult to do. Stay locked into a groove for a long period of time and not do a fill.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
want to, you know what I mean, hit a crash or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that, put some tunes on, play, get a beat going, and just try and like get that beat as solid as possible and playing in time. That's the
it.
job right there. It's like,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. Playing in time, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the number one.
Yeah. I mean, I did a gig with a guy once, and I don't know how this happened, but all he had was a kick, hats, and snare. And he's like, he's like, I've left my fucking toms at home. I was like, are you gonna be able to do the gig? I was like, oh yeah, I can do the gig. I was like, but there's no. He's like, yeah, I don't need any of that shit. It's just that's just fills and bollocks. I'll just hold it down. And for 2 hours, it was just kick, hat, and snare. It's like this is like, it was kind of strange because I was on acoustic guitar and singing, and it's like there's no fills to kind of. It's going to sound odd, but there's no fills to open the space up. It was just a groove. Like there was like little snare hi-hat fills that he was doing, but there was like, he said, do you know what? I'll use it as a 2-hour rehearsal to just play a groove. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. I was like, okay. And it was really, it's almost cathartic. Like it's just leaning up against this wall of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's cool.
It's like, it does get you focused on what's most important in the song. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. And one more thing. I did a small tour with it was a Bon Jovi tribute, and the keyboard player was a phenomenal drummer. I was like, "What are you doing playing keys? Why aren't you playing drums?" And he did this little clinic, like in the sound check, and he said, I do all these clinics all over the world, and he would just go off on these fucking massive tangents, like just playing all these fills, 7s over 5s. It was just like insane. He said, "But you know what? No one can do." And he just went, do that for 30 minutes. If you could do that, you're a drummer. I was like,
yeah.
I said, out of all of the shit that I just did, it all means nothing if you can't just go, and can you hit the snare at exactly the same spot every single time? Because that's the difference between a good drummer and a great drummer.
Yeah.
So, wow,
It's interesting when you're coming up musically, and you probably experience this too. You get into like more shredding. Like it's like, the more like technical, like nail period, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All that, like, the prog rock stuff.
Yeah.
Me and my friends trying to learn all that. And then it come down the other side of the mountain. It's just like, you just want to groove.
Yeah.
You find that so exciting now. It's like, that's cool.
I know, but I had a student. He left last week. We're walking out the studio. We're walking down the garden. I was dropping off at his mum's, and he said he packed all his gear up. We're chatting about music and stuff. He went, "Yeah, so when am I going to learn how to shred? You're a while off, but I've just got to get you grooving onto that 2 and 4 first. So if you can do that, then that's 80%, 90% of what guitar players do. You're just laying chords and rhythm down. Can you hold it down? Can you hold that groove? Can you hold a chord down?"
Good teacher. That's really good. That's important. He's lucky because I remember that growing up. I had a friend that had a great teacher.
Yeah.
And he was like that, just, you got to lay down the law.
Yeah.
You're teaching them. It's like that.
That's what, I get important like nuggets of info that I had at college, like really kind of inspired me to what to focus on. It's like guitar players will spend 90% of their practice time practicing the thing that they only have to do 10% of the time, and the stuff that they have to do 90% of the time, they barely even fucking practice it. Like, can you just hold a C chord down? Like the same as a drummer. Can you just hold that simple groove down for half hour? Can you just hold a C chord and just groove on the 3 and the 4 or the 1 and the 2 or whatever? Can you hold that constant rhythm? You're not allowed to deviate. Just hold that rhythm down for as long as you can. It's like, because that's what we do. That's how you can earn a living.
Right.
So, anyway, Dave, it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and yeah, all the best. Whatever you've got coming up in this year, and if you're ever over in London and you want to grab a beer or a curry, please, I've got your email now, so I'll hound you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll stay in touch for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, man.